The barn door hung crooked on its hinges when Xavier Randolph returned from 3 weeks on the cattle trail. And through the gap, he saw a woman in a threadbare calico dress brushing down his best mare with gentle, practiced strokes. He dismounted slowly, every muscle protesting after the long ride from Santa Fe back to his ranch outside Placitas, New Mexico. The October sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dusty yard. His hand moved instinctively toward the revolver at his hip, then stopped. Horse thieves did not typically groom their targets with such obvious care and affection. The woman must have heard his boots crunch on the gravel because she turned, startled, her hand flying to her throat. She was young, perhaps 22 or 23, with dark auburn hair pulled back in a simple braid and eyes the color of creek water after rain. Dirt smudged her cheek, and her dress, though clean, had been mended so many times it resembled a patchwork quilt. Despite her disheveled appearance, something about the set of her shoulders spoke of pride. "I can work for my keep," she said before he could speak, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I know you did not ask for help, but I have been tending your horses for 2 days now. They were hungry and thirsty when I arrived, and the bay had a stone lodged in his shoe. I have fed the chickens too, and repaired what I could of the fence in the west pasture." Xavier stepped into the barn, and she backed up slightly, though she kept her chin raised. Up close, he could see the exhaustion in her face, the hollowness in her cheeks that spoke of too many missed meals. But her hands on the brush were steady, and when he glanced at the mare, he noted the animal's coat gleamed. "Who are you?" he asked, keeping his voice level. "Lydia Morrison." She swallowed hard. "I came from Socorro. My father died 6 months ago and the bank took our land. I have been traveling north looking for work. When I saw your ranch, it appeared abandoned, but then I saw the animals needed care and I thought—" She trailed off, seeming to realize how her story sounded. "So you just walked onto my property and started working. I know how it looks." Lydia set down the brush with careful precision. "But I am good with horses, better than good. My father raised them before he took sick. I can earn my place here if you will let me. Just food and a roof. I will not ask for wages until I have proven myself." Xavier studied her for a long moment. The truth was, he had been trying to manage the ranch alone since his hired hand had left for the gold fields in Colorado 3 months back. The place showed signs of his absence. The barn needed mucking, the tack needed mending, and he had at least a dozen projects he had been putting off because there were not enough hours in the day. "You have been sleeping in my barn?" he asked. A flush crept up her neck. "In the loft." "I did not touch anything in the house. That would have been wrong." Despite himself, Xavier felt a corner of his mouth twitch. She had trespassed on his land, helped herself to his resources, and housed herself in his barn, but entering his home would have been wrong. There was a certain logic to it, he supposed, even if it was not the sort most people would follow. "Can you cook?" he asked. Hope flared in her eyes. "Yes, not fancy, but I can make a decent stew and my biscuits do not break teeth. The house needs cleaning. I have been on the trail and before that, working dawn to dusk. I have let things slide. I can clean." She took a step forward. "Does this mean you will let me stay?" Xavier ran a hand through his hair, darkened with trail dust. Every instinct told him this was a bad idea. Unmarried men did not employ unmarried women without causing talk, and Placitas, though small, had more than its share of gossips. But when he looked at Lydia Morrison, he saw the same desperation he had felt 6 years ago when he had arrived in New Mexico with nothing but a horse and determination. "1-month trial," he said finally. "You will sleep in the spare room in the house. I will not have people saying I kept you in the barn like livestock. You will handle the horses, the chickens, cooking and cleaning." In return, you get room and board. After a month, if the arrangement works, we will discuss wages. Fair. The smile that broke across her face transformed her entirely, erasing years of hardship in an instant. More than fair. Thank you, Mr. Randolph. You will not regret this. It is Xavier, he said, and I hope you are right. That first evening set the pattern for the days that followed. Lydia proved true to her word. She rose before dawn and had coffee brewing by the time Xavier came down from his room. She fried eggs and salt pork while he tended to the early morning chores, and they ate together in comfortable silence as the sun painted the Sandia Mountains purple and gold. After breakfast, she threw herself into work with a fierce determination that impressed him. She mucked stalls, repaired tack, and spent hours with the horses. Xavier noticed she had a gift for it. The animals responded to her touch, even his ornery gelding that usually snapped at everyone. Under her care, the creature turned docile as a lamb. In the afternoons, while Xavier worked on the endless ranch tasks, Lydia attacked the house. Years of bachelor living had left the place in sorry shape. Dust coated every surface, dishes piled in the basin, and his clothes lay in heaps wherever he had discarded them. She did not complain, just rolled up her sleeves and worked. By the end of the first week, Xavier hardly recognized his own home. The windows sparkled, the floors gleamed, and the smell of baking bread filled the air. She had even mended his shirts, patching holes he had ignored for months. "You did not have to do that," he said one evening, finding a neat stack of repaired clothing on his bed. "I had time," Lydia replied from the doorway. She held a basket of eggs, presumably just collected from the henhouse. "Besides, you cannot go to town looking like a scarecrow. People will think you cannot afford hired help." "About that," Xavier said slowly, "people are going to talk about you being here." She set the basket down carefully. "I know. I heard the whispers when I went to the well this morning." Mrs. Henderson was walking past, and she gave me a look that could curdle milk. "Sarah Henderson gossips as a profession," Xavier said, "but she is not wrong to wonder. This is an unusual situation. Would you rather I left?" Lydia's voice remained steady, but he saw her hands clench in her skirt. "No." The word came out faster than he intended. "No, I just wanted you to know that I am aware it might cause difficulties. If anyone gives you trouble, you tell me." Something softened in her expression. "I can handle gossip, Xavier. I have survived worse than wagging tongues." He wanted to ask what she meant, what hardships had brought her to his door, but the walls in her eyes stopped him. Everyone had secrets, and she would share hers when ready, if ever. The days fell into a rhythm. Xavier found himself looking forward to mornings, to the sound of Lydia moving around the kitchen, humming softly to herself. She had a pleasant voice, untrained but sweet, and she sang old ballads while she worked. Sometimes he caught himself pausing in his work just to listen. They talked over meals, tentative at first, then with growing ease. She told him about growing up on her father's horse ranch, about her mother who had died when Lydia was 12, leaving her to manage the household while still a child. He shared stories of his own past, of leaving Missouri after his parents died in a fever outbreak, of the long journey west and the backbreaking work of establishing the ranch. "Why New Mexico?" Lydia asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky crimson and gold. "The land," Xavier said simply. "I saw these mountains and something in me just knew this was where I belonged. I know that probably sounds foolish, not foolish at all." She leaned back in her chair, her face peaceful in the dying light. "I understand completely. There is something about this place. It feels like the earth itself is alive here." He glanced at her, surprised. Most people saw only desert and dust, but Lydia seemed to perceive the beauty he had fallen in love with, the harsh majesty of the landscape. October gave way to November, and the month trial period passed without either of them mentioning it. Xavier told himself he simply had not found time to discuss wages, but the truth was deeper and more complicated. Having Lydia at the ranch had changed everything. The house felt like a home instead of just a place to sleep between work. Meals became something to anticipate rather than a necessary refueling. And her presence, he had to admit, brought a lightness to his days that had been missing for longer than he cared to acknowledge. He tried to ignore the way his heart lifted when he heard her laugh, or how he found excuses to work near wherever she was. This was an employment arrangement, nothing more. She depended on him for survival, and any feelings beyond that would be taking advantage. But then came the day that changed everything. Xavier had ridden out to check the fence line in the north pasture, a task that should have taken a few hours. But his horse threw a shoe, forcing him to walk the animal back slowly. By the time he reached the barn, the sun had already set. He heard raised voices from the yard, male voices slurred with drink. "Come on, sweetheart, just one drink with us. We rode all the way from Albuquerque. I told you I am working. Please leave." That was Lydia, her voice tight with fear she was trying to hide. Xavier rounded the corner to find 3 cowboys crowding Lydia against the water trough. They were young, probably not more than 20, and clearly well into their cups. Empty whiskey bottles littered the ground near their horses. "The lady asked you to leave," Xavier said, his voice cutting through the dusk like a blade. The tallest of the 3 turned, swaying slightly. "This your woman? You should teach her some hospitality. We are just being friendly. You are trespassing. Get on your horses and ride out. Now." "Or what?" The cowboy took a step toward Xavier, his hand moving toward his gun. Xavier's revolver cleared leather before the drunk could complete the motion. "Or I will shoot you for threatening a woman on my property. Your choice." The weight of the weapon in his hand and the cold certainty in his voice seemed to penetrate even their alcohol-fogged minds. The tall cowboy raised his hand slowly. "Easy now. We did not mean anything by it. We will go." They mounted up with exaggerated care, casting dark looks back at the ranch. Xavier kept his gun drawn until they disappeared into the gathering darkness, then finally holstered it and turned to Lydia. She had wrapped her arms around herself, and in the lamplight spilling from the house, he could see she was shaking. "Are you hurt?" he asked, closing the distance between them. "No, they did not touch me, just scared me." She tried to smile, but it wavered. "I should have stayed inside once it got dark. That was foolish. You were working. You had every right to be in the yard of your own home." The words hung between them, freighted with meaning neither acknowledged. "Come inside. I will make you some tea." "You make tea?" Despite her fear, amusement colored her voice. "I can boil water and pour it over leaves. That counts as making tea," she laughed, a shaky sound but real. They walked to the house together, and Xavier found himself placing a protective hand on her lower back, guiding her up the steps. The gesture felt natural, right, even as part of him recognized he was crossing an invisible line. Inside, Lydia sank into a chair at the kitchen table while Xavier fumbled with the kettle and tea tin. His hands were steadier than hers, but not by much. The image of those cowboys crowding her, the fear in her voice, had ignited something fierce and primal in his chest. "Here." He set a cup before her, the tea probably steeped too long and too strong, but she wrapped her hands around it gratefully. "Thank you," she said softly, "for coming back when you did. I should have been here." He dropped into the chair across from her. "I should not have left you alone." "Xavier, you cannot be everywhere at once. You have a ranch to run. Then I will hire someone, a hand to help with the heavy work, so I am here more." She looked up at him over the rim of her cup, her eyes searching his face. "Why, you managed before I came. Because the thought of something happening to you tears at me. Because this place feels empty when you are not in it. Because somewhere in the last 6 weeks, you have become essential to my happiness." He could not say any of that. Instead, he said, "Because it makes good business sense. The ranch is growing. I need the help." Disappointment flickered across her face there and gone so quickly he almost missed it. She nodded and looked down at her tea. "That makes sense." They sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Xavier wanted to reach across the table, take her hand, tell her everything he had been holding back. But the gulf between employer and employee, between the man with property and the woman with nothing, felt too wide to cross. "I should check the horses," Lydia said finally, rising. "I already did. They are settled for the night." "Oh." She stood awkwardly, clearly unsure what to do with herself. "Then I suppose I will turn in. Tomorrow I wanted to work with the new colt, the one with the white blaze." "Lydia." Her name stopped her at the doorway. "I am glad you are here. I want you to know that." She turned back, and something in her expression made his breath catch. "I am glad too. Good night, Xavier." After she disappeared up the stairs, Xavier sat in the kitchen for a long time, nursing cold tea and wrestling with feelings he could no longer deny. Somewhere along the way, Lydia Morrison had become far more than hired help. She had become the person he thought about first upon waking and last before sleep. She had become laughter and warmth, and the missing piece he had not known he was searching for. But what could he offer her? A hard life on a remote ranch, with a man who knew more about cattle and horses than courting. She deserved better than a rough cowboy with dirt under his nails and dust in his hair. And yet, when he finally climbed the stairs to his own room, he could not help pausing outside her door, listening to the soft sounds of her settling in for the night, and allowing himself to imagine, just for a moment, what it might be like if things were different. Winter arrived early that year, bringing freezing rain that turned the yard to mud and kept them confined to the immediate area around the house and barn. Xavier hired a man from town, a steady widower named Tom Peterson, who needed work and did not seem inclined toward gossip. With Tom handling much of the heavy labor, Xavier found himself working alongside Lydia more often. They made a good team. She had an eye for horses that matched his own, and together they trained the new colts, developing a wordless communication that made the work flow smoothly. She would position the animal while he checked the tack, or he would distract while she examined hooves. They moved around each other with an ease that felt like dancing. December brought the first real snow, blanketing the ranch in white silence. Lydia stood at the kitchen window one morning, watching the flakes fall with an expression of such wonder that Xavier came to stand beside her. "First snow you have seen?" he asked. "No, but it never stops being magical." She glanced up at him, and he realized how close they were standing, near enough that he could see the gold flecks in her green eyes. "Do you ever just stop and appreciate how beautiful this all is?" "I do now," he said, and knew he was not talking about the snow. Color rose in her cheeks, and she looked away, but not before he saw the answering awareness in her expression. The air between them felt charged, full of unspoken words and barely restrained longing. "I should start breakfast," Lydia murmured, but she did not move. "Lydia." Her name came out rough. "I need to tell you something." "Xavier, please." She closed her eyes. "Do not say it, not yet." "Why not?" "Because I have nothing. No money, no family, no prospects beyond what you have given me out of kindness. And if you say what I think you are going to say, I will not know if it is real or if I am just desperate and grateful." The words hit him like a physical blow. "You think I would take advantage of you that way?" "No." Her eyes flew open. "No. I think I might take advantage of you without meaning to. Xavier, I care about you. more than I should, more than is wise. But I need to stand on my own feet first. I need to know that what I feel is real, not just relief at finding safety after so much fear." He wanted to argue, to tell her that what they had was real and true and not dependent on circumstances. But looking at her face, seeing the vulnerability and determination there, he understood. She needed this, needed to claim her own strength before she could join it with his. "All right," he said finally. "But Lydia, you should know that what I feel has nothing to do with employment or obligation. When you are ready to hear it, I will still be here." She reached out, hesitated, then gently touched his cheek. The contact sent electricity through him. "Thank you for understanding." Christmas came, and with it an unexpected snowstorm that trapped them at the ranch for 3 days. Tom Peterson had gone to visit his daughter in Santa Fe before the weather turned, leaving Xavier and Lydia alone. They should have felt isolated, cut off. Instead, those 3 days became some of the happiest Xavier had ever known. They decorated the house with pine boughs and holly berries Lydia had gathered before the storm. She taught him to make sugar cookies, laughing when his attempts came out lopsided and burnt. He told her stories of Christmases past, of his mother's terrible singing and his father's worst jokes, and found that the memories brought warmth instead of pain for the first time in years. On Christmas Eve, they sat by the fire after dinner, the room lit only by flickering flames and a few precious candles. Snow continued to fall outside, cocooning them in peaceful silence. "I have something for you," Xavier said, rising to retrieve a package he had hidden in his room. Lydia's eyes widened. "Xavier, I did not expect gifts. I did not get you anything. You have given me plenty." He handed her the package, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. "Go on, open it." She unwrapped it carefully, preserving the paper, and her breath caught when she saw what lay inside. A pair of riding gloves, made of soft leather and lined with fleece. Fine work, expensive, the kind she never could have afforded on her own. "I noticed your hands getting chapped from the cold," Xavier said, suddenly uncertain. "I thought these might help. They are beautiful." She slipped one on, flexing her fingers. "Xavier, this is too much. It is not nearly enough." He sat beside her on the hearth. "Lydia, I know what you said and I am trying to respect it, but I need you to understand something. You are not some act of charity. You have made this place, made my life, better in every way. These gloves are not payment or obligation. They are a gift from someone who cares about you, nothing more." She blinked rapidly, and he saw tears gleaming on her lashes. "I did not think I would ever have this again. A home. Someone who sees me as more than a burden or a problem to solve. You could never be a burden." The words came out fierce. "Lydia, you are the strongest person I know. You walked onto a stranger's property with nothing and made a place for yourself through sheer determination and skill. That is not weakness. That is courage." A tear spilled over, tracking down her cheek. Xavier reached up without thinking, brushing it away with his thumb. The touch froze them both. Lydia's hand came up to cover his, holding it against her face. "Xavier," she whispered. "Tell me to stop," he said, even as he leaned closer. "Tell me this is not what you want and I will walk away. I will never mention it again." Instead of answering, she closed the last inch between them and kissed him. It was soft, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. Xavier's hand slid into her hair, cradling her head as he deepened the kiss. She tasted like the peppermint tea she favored, sweet and warm. Her hands clutched his shirt, pulling him closer, and he went willingly, wrapping his other arm around her waist. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Xavier rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said, the words tumbling out. "I know it is too soon. I know the circumstances are complicated, but I love you, Lydia Morrison, and I cannot pretend any more that I do not." It is not too soon. She cupped his face in her new gloves, her eyes shining. I love you too. I have been falling for you since that first day, when you could have sent me away but chose kindness instead. I love your gentleness with the horses, your patience, the way you hum when you think no one is listening. I love you, Xavier Randolph, and I am tired of pretending I do not. He kissed her again, longer this time, pouring months of restrained feeling into it. When they finally drew apart, both were smiling like fools. So where does this leave us? Lydia asked, her hand finding his and lacing their fingers together. I want to marry you, Xavier said. But I know that is too fast, and I do not want you to feel pressured. So I am officially courting you if you will have me. We will do this proper, the way you deserve. Xavier Randolph, are you asking to court me while we sit alone in your house on Christmas Eve? Despite her teasing tone, joy radiated from her face. I know the timing could be better. We should be at a church social or a town dance, but I could not wait any more. Good. She leaned her head on his shoulder, because I could not wait any more either. And yes, I will absolutely let you court me, even if we are doing it somewhat backwards. They stayed up late into the night, talking and stealing kisses, making plans and dreaming aloud. By the time they finally retired to their separate rooms, the storm had passed, leaving the world outside blanketed in pristine white. Xavier lay in bed, too happy to sleep, listening to the settling of the house and thinking about the woman across the hall. A year ago, he had been alone, convinced that solitude was his lot in life. Now, everything had changed. Now he had Lydia. The new year brought change to the ranch and to Placitas as a whole. Word spread quickly that Xavier Randolph was courting his hired woman, and reactions were mixed. Some of the ranchers and townspeople saw it as a romantic story, a found woman making good. Others, particularly some of the more established families, viewed it with suspicion and disapproval. Sarah Henderson, as expected, led the chorus of gossip. She made sure everyone knew that Lydia had been living at the ranch unchaperoned, that she had appeared from nowhere with no references or family, that the whole situation was highly irregular. Lydia held her head high through it all. She accompanied Xavier to church on Sundays, ignoring the whispers and stares. She shopped at the general store, answering intrusive questions with polite firmness. And she continued to work the ranch with the same dedication she always had. But Xavier could see the toll it took. Some evenings she would be quiet, withdrawn, the spark dimmed in her eyes. On those nights, he would draw her close on the porch swing he had built, wrapping a blanket around them both against the cold. "They will come around," he told her one February evening as she sat silent beside him. "Once they see we are serious, that this is not some temporary arrangement. And if they do not," she looked up at him. "Xavier, I do not want to damage your standing in the community. You have worked hard to build your reputation here." "My reputation is worth nothing if I have to give you up to preserve it." He kissed her forehead. "Besides, Tom Peterson says half the women in town are just jealous." That surprised a laugh out of her. "Tom said that," he did. "Apparently, you arriving and capturing the heart of one of the area's most eligible bachelors has caused quite a stir." He grinned. His words, not mine. "Most eligible?" Lydia raised an eyebrow. "You never mentioned you had admirers." "I do not." Tom was exaggerating. "But there might have been a few hints dropped over the years that I politely ignored." She snuggled closer, fitting perfectly against his side. "Well, they are too late now. I claimed you first." "Yes, you did." He tightened his arm around her. "Best day of my life, when I came home and found you in my barn." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. These quiet moments together had become Xavier's favorite part of each day. The work was satisfying and he enjoyed training horses and building the ranch. But nothing compared to simply being with Lydia, feeling the warmth of her beside him, knowing that she was his and he was hers. "I have been thinking," Lydia said after a while, "about your proposal, about marriage." Xavier's heart kicked up. They had not discussed timing beyond agreeing to a proper courtship. "And I am ready." She turned to face him fully. "I know we said we would wait, let people get used to the idea, do things proper. But Xavier, I do not want to wait anymore. I know my own heart and I know yours. I want to be your wife. Are you certain? I do not want you to feel rushed because of the gossip." "I am not rushing because of gossip. I am ready because I love you and I want to build a life with you officially. The gossips are going to talk regardless. We might as well give them something real to discuss." Xavier cupped her face in his hands, searching her eyes for any doubt. He found only certainty and love shining back at him. "Then yes. Yes, let us get married, as soon as we can arrange it." Her answering smile could have lit the darkness. "Really, really. I will ride into town tomorrow and talk to the priest. We can be married within the month if you are agreeable." Instead of answering with words, she kissed him, deep and thorough, conveying everything she felt. When they broke apart, both were breathless and grinning. "A month sounds perfect," Lydia said. They were married on a bright March morning with wildflowers just beginning to bloom across the hills. Father Rodriguez performed the ceremony in the small adobe church in Placitas, with Tom Peterson and his daughter serving as witnesses. Xavier had wanted to invite the whole town to celebrate openly, but Lydia preferred something intimate, just the people who truly mattered. She wore a simple blue dress that she had sewn herself, with white flowers woven into her hair. To Xavier, she looked more beautiful than any woman in silk and diamonds. His hands shook slightly as he slipped the gold band onto her finger, a ring that had belonged to his grandmother and was the only piece of jewelry he owned. "I, Xavier Randolph, take you, Lydia Morrison, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "To have and to hold from this day forward for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part." Lydia's eyes glistened with tears as she repeated her own vows, her voice clear and strong. "I, Lydia Morrison, take you, Xavier Randolph, to be my lawfully wedded husband. To have and to hold from this day forward for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part." When Father Rodriguez pronounced them husband and wife, and told Xavier he could kiss his bride, the small gathering erupted in cheers. Xavier gathered Lydia into his arms and kissed her thoroughly, not caring who saw, wanting the whole world to know that this remarkable woman was now his wife. They held a small celebration at the ranch afterward. Tom and his daughter had helped prepare food, and a few neighbors who had become friends stopped by with gifts and well wishes. It was not the grand affair some weddings were, but it was perfect in its simplicity and genuine warmth. As the sun set and their guests departed, Xavier and Lydia stood together in the yard of the ranch that was now truly theirs, watching the sky turn purple and gold. "Happy?" Xavier asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "More than I ever thought possible." Lydia leaned back against him. "A year ago I was alone and scared with no idea what the future held, and now I am here, married to the best man I have ever known with a home and a purpose. It feels like a dream. If it is a dream, I never want to wake up." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Come on, Mrs. Randolph. Let us go inside. It is getting cold." She turned in his arms, her eyes dancing. "Mrs. Randolph, I am going to have to get used to that. You have the rest of your life to practice." Their wedding night was gentle and unhurried, a tender exploration and a celebration of their love. Afterward, Lying in the darkness with Lydia tucked against his side, her head on his chest and her arm across his waist, Xavier felt a contentment so profound it almost frightened him. He had not known it was possible to be this happy. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I love you too," she murmured back, already half asleep. Always. The following months brought new rhythms and routines as they settled into married life. Lydia took over full management of the horses, developing a breeding program that began to draw attention from other ranchers. Her skill was undeniable, and even those who had looked down on her background had to admit she knew her trade. Xavier focused on expanding the ranch, buying adjacent land when it became available and building up their cattle herd. With Lydia managing the horses and Tom handling much of the daily labor, he had time to plan and grow the operation strategically. By summer, the ranch was thriving. They hired 2 more hands, young men from town who proved hardworking and reliable. The house rang with activity and purpose, so different from the silent, dusty place it had been when Lydia first arrived. The townspeople gradually came around. Seeing Xavier and Lydia together, witnessing their obvious devotion and the success of their partnership, most of the gossip died down. Even Sarah Henderson eventually stopped making pointed comments, though she never quite became friendly. In August, Lydia missed her monthly courses. She said nothing at first, not wanting to raise hopes prematurely, but Xavier noticed the change in her. She glowed with an inner light, and sometimes he caught her with her hand pressed to her still flat stomach, a secret smile on her lips. "Are you going to tell me?" he asked one evening as they prepared for bed, "or are you going to make me guess?" She looked up from brushing her hair, her eyes wide. "Tell you what? About the baby you are carrying?" Her mouth fell open. "How did you know? I am barely 2 months along. I know you." He crossed the room and knelt before her, placing his hands over hers on her belly. "I see it in your face, in the way you move, like you are carrying something precious. Are you happy about it?" "Terrified," she admitted. "But yes, so happy. Are you, beyond words?" He leaned forward, kissing her stomach through her nightdress. "A child, our child. Lydia, you have given me everything I ever wanted and things I did not even know to wish for." She ran her fingers through his hair, her touch gentle. "I am scared, Xavier. My mother died in childbirth with what would have been my baby brother. What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing is going to go wrong." He looked up at her, trying to project confidence even as his own fears stirred. "We will get the best midwife, take every precaution, and I will be with you every step of the way. You cannot be with me during the birth. That is not how it is done." "Then I will change how it is done. You will not go through that alone, Lydia. I promise you that." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she pulled him up into a fierce embrace. They held each other for a long moment, both overcome with the magnitude of what was coming. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall. Lydia continued working with the horses, though Xavier fretted constantly about her overdoing it. She tolerated his concern with good humor, assuring him that she knew her limits. They prepared the small room next to theirs as a nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow and building a cradle from oak wood. Lydia sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her hands moving with practiced skill. Xavier found himself stopping to watch her sometimes, overwhelmed by love for this woman who had stumbled into his life and transformed it completely. Winter arrived, and with it came Lydia's time. The labor started on a cold January morning, 3 weeks earlier than expected. Xavier sent Tom racing to town for the midwife, while he stayed with Lydia, holding her hand through the contractions, wiping her face with cool cloths, murmuring encouragement and love. The midwife, a capable woman named Clara who had delivered half the babies in the territory, arrived and took charge. She tried to shoo Xavier out of the room, but Lydia gripped his hand and refused to let go. "He stays," she panted between contractions. "I need him here." Clara pursed her lips but did not argue. "Suit yourself. But do not faint on me, Mr. Randolph. I have enough to manage without a grown man passed out on the floor." "I am not going to faint," Xavier said, though the sight of Lydia in pain made his stomach churn. The labor lasted through the day and into the night. Xavier stayed by Lydia's side the entire time, never leaving even when Clara suggested breaks. He held Lydia's hand, let her squeeze until his bones ached, spoke soft words of encouragement and love, and prayed harder than he ever had in his life. Finally, as the clock struck 3 in the morning, a baby's cry pierced the air. Clara worked quickly, cleaning and wrapping the infant before placing the bundle in Lydia's arms. "A boy," she announced with satisfaction. Healthy and strong lunged from the sound of him. Xavier looked down at his son, at the tiny red face and waving fists, and felt his eyes fill with tears. "He is perfect. He is beautiful," Lydia whispered, exhausted but radiant. She looked up at Xavier. "We have a son." "We have a son," he repeated, the words settling into his soul like a benediction. He leaned down, kissing Lydia's forehead. "You are amazing. You are the strongest, most incredible person, and I love you more than I can say." She smiled tiredly. "I love you too. Do you want to hold him?" With trembling hands, Xavier took his son, cradling the tiny weight carefully. The baby stared up at him with unfocused eyes, and Xavier felt his heart expand in ways he had not known possible. This small person, this perfect combination of him and Lydia, represented a future full of hope and possibility. "Welcome to the world, little one," he murmured. "I am your father, and I promise you are going to have a good life. Your mother and I are going to make sure of it." They named him James, after Xavier's father, with Morrison as his middle name to honor Lydia's family. The baby thrived, growing strong and healthy under Lydia's devoted care. Xavier discovered reserves of patience he had not known he possessed, walking the floor with a crying infant in the middle of the night, changing soiled clothes, and marveling at every small development. The ranch continued to prosper. Word of Lydia's skill with horses spread, and buyers came from as far as Texas to purchase animals she had trained. Xavier's cattle operation expanded as well, and by the time James was 2 years old, they had become one of the most successful ranches in the territory. They added to their family as the years passed. A daughter, Emma, arrived when James was 3, followed 2 years later by another son they named Daniel. The house that had once echoed with emptiness now rang with children's laughter and the organized chaos of family life. Lydia proved as skilled a mother as she was a horsewoman. She raised the children with a firm but loving hand, teaching them about animals and the land, about honesty and hard work. Xavier watched her with endless admiration, falling more in love with her with each passing year. On quiet evenings, after the children were in bed, they would sit together on the porch as they had from the beginning, watching the sun set over the Sandia Mountains. Sometimes they talked about the day, the children, plans for the ranch. Other times they simply sat in comfortable silence, content in each other's presence. "You ever think about that first day?" Lydia asked one evening when James was 5 and Emma was 2. Little Daniel slept peacefully in her arms. "When you found me in your barn." "All the time," Xavier admitted. "I think about how close I came to sending you away, to missing out on all of this. It terrifies me sometimes, how easily we might never have found each other. But we did find each other." She shifted Daniel to her shoulder, patting his back gently. "And look at what we have built. A family, a home, a life. Xavier, I know I say it often, but I am so grateful for you, for this, for everything." "I am the grateful one," He reached over, taking her free hand. "You saved me, Lydia. I did not even realize how alone I was until you showed me what it meant to have a partner, to have love. You gave me everything that matters." She leaned her head on his shoulder, careful not to jostle the sleeping baby. "We saved each other, I think. We were both alone, both searching for something we could not name. And then we found it in each other." They sat in peaceful silence as the stars emerged overhead, the same stars that had witnessed their first tentative conversations, their first kiss, all the moments that had built their life together. The years continued to pass, bringing the inevitable changes and challenges that life delivered. There were hard winters and dry summers, sick animals and market fluctuations, the 100 small disasters that tested any ranching operation. But Xavier and Lydia faced them together, their partnership only growing stronger through adversity. The children grew, each developing their own personality and interests. James took after his mother, showing an early aptitude for horses that promised to carry on the family tradition. Emma was quieter, more studious, with a love of books that Xavier fostered by ordering volumes from Santa Fe. Daniel proved to be a combination of both parents, equally comfortable in the barn or the house, with an easy charm that made everyone love him. Xavier and Lydia expanded the ranch house as the family grew, adding rooms and improving the structure. What had started as a simple bachelor dwelling transformed into a proper home, with space for the children, a real dining room, and even a small library for Emma's growing collection. The town of Placitas grew as well, becoming more established and prosperous. The railroad arrived when James was 8, bringing new opportunities and connections to the wider world. Xavier served on the town council for several terms, respected now as one of the community's leading citizens. The gossip that had once surrounded his marriage to Lydia had long since faded, replaced by admiration for their success and partnership. On their 10th anniversary, Xavier arranged a surprise for Lydia. He had commissioned a painting from an artist visiting from St. Louis, a portrait of the ranch with the mountains in the background. When he presented it to her over a special dinner, he had somehow managed to prepare himself while she was occupied with the children. Tears filled her eyes. "It is beautiful," she said, studying the canvas. The artist had captured the quality of light that made New Mexico special, the way the sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber. "Not as beautiful as you," Xavier said, pulling her into his arms. 10 years, Lydia. 10 years since you became my wife, and I love you more now than I did on our wedding day." "How is that possible?" she asked, smiling up at him. "I have gotten older, grayer, with more wrinkles. You have gotten more beautiful." He touched her face tenderly. "These wrinkles come from laughter and smiles. These gray hairs come from raising our children and building our life together. Every line, every mark, tells the story of us, and that makes you beautiful beyond measure." She kissed him then, deep and sweet, a kiss that still held the passion of their early days tempered with the deeper intimacy of years together. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "Here is to 10 more years," Lydia said, "and 10 after that, and 10 after that." "Here is to forever," Xavier corrected, "because that is how long I plan to love you." The children brought their own adventures as they entered adolescence. James began training horses in earnest at 14, working alongside his mother with natural skill. Emma discovered a talent for teaching and began helping at the small school in Placitas. Daniel, ever the charmer, showed an interest in business and commerce, talking about expanding the ranch's reach and market presence. Xavier watched his children grow with pride tinged with bittersweetness. They were becoming their own people, preparing to make their own marks on the world. He and Lydia had long conversations about the future, about how to support the children's dreams while maintaining the legacy they had built. "They are going to leave us eventually," Lydia said one evening when James was 17 and talking about possibly studying veterinary medicine in Santa Fe. "I know," Xavier admitted. "Part of me wants to keep them here forever, safe on the ranch, but that would not be fair to them." "No, it would not." She took his hand. "We raised them to be independent to pursue their passions. We cannot hold them back now just because we will miss them." "When did you become so wise?" "I have always been wise. You just were too distracted by my beauty to notice." She grinned at him, the same mischievous expression that had captivated him years ago. Xavier pulled her close, grateful beyond words for this woman who had stumbled into his barn asking to work for her keep and ended up giving him the world. James did go to Santa Fe to study, returning 2 years later with knowledge and skills that he immediately put to use improving the ranch's veterinary care. Emma married a teacher from Albuquerque and moved there, though she visited often with her own growing family. Daniel stayed on the ranch, developing a successful side business breeding and selling horses across the Southwest. Xavier and Lydia became grandparents, delighting in the new generation. They hosted gatherings that brought the whole extended family together, filling the ranch with noise and laughter and love. The children they had raised were now raising children of their own, passing on the values and lessons they had learned. On their 20th anniversary, Xavier and Lydia took a trip together, leaving the ranch in James and Daniel's capable hands. They traveled to California, seeing the ocean for the first time, marveling at the vast blue expanse so different from their beloved desert mountains. "Have you ever regretted it?" Xavier asked one evening as they walked along the beach, the waves lapping at their feet. "Staying with me instead of maybe seeing more of the world." Lydia stopped walking and turned to face him. The setting sun painted her hair with light, and despite the years, he still saw the young woman who had tended his horses and stolen his heart. "Xavier Randolph, in 20 years of marriage, that might be the most foolish question you have ever asked me." She cupped his face in her hands. "You are my world. The ranch is my world. Our children and grandchildren are my world. I have everything I could ever want. The only thing I have ever regretted is that I did not find you sooner, so we could have had even more years together." He kissed her there on the beach as the sun disappeared into the ocean, as in love as he had been on their wedding day, more in love than he had been the day before, less in love than he would be tomorrow. That was the nature of their relationship. It grew and deepened with every passing moment. They returned to the ranch renewed and energized, ready for whatever the future held. And the future, as it turned out, held plenty. James married a lovely woman from Santa Fe, and they built a house on the northern edge of the ranch property. Daniel married one of Emma's friends from Albuquerque, and they took over the main house when Xavier and Lydia built themselves a smaller dwelling nearby, wanting to give the younger generation space to make the place their own. The smaller house suited them perfectly. It had a wide porch where they spent their evenings, a comfortable bedroom, a kitchen just big enough for the two of them, and a sitting room lined with books and memories. They were near enough to stay involved with the ranch and see their grandchildren daily, but far enough to maintain their own peace and privacy. Xavier finally retired from active ranching when he turned 60, handing over full control to James and Daniel. It was harder than he expected, stepping back from the work that had defined so much of his life. But Lydia, who had gradually reduced her own involvement as arthritis made working with horses more difficult, helped him adjust. "Think of it as a new adventure," she told him. "We have spent 40 years building something amazing. Now we get to enjoy it, to watch our children and grandchildren carry it forward while we finally have time to just be together. She was right, as usual. Xavier discovered the joy of reading for pleasure, something he had never had time for during his working years. He and Lydia took long walks around the ranch, moving slower now but seeing more, appreciating details they had overlooked in the rush of daily labor. They told stories to their grandchildren, tales of the old days when the ranch was just starting, when Placida's was barely more than a few buildings, when their grandmother had arrived with nothing but determination, and away with horses. The children listened with wide eyes, amazed that their grandparents had once been young and adventurous. On their 30th anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration. Children and grandchildren came from across the territory, filling the ranch with noise and chaos and love. A photographer had been hired from Santa Fe, and he arranged everyone for a formal portrait. 3 generations gathered together. Xavier stood with Lydia in the center, surrounded by their descendants, and felt a satisfaction so profound it brought tears to his eyes. This was his legacy. Not just the successful ranch or the thriving business, but this family, these connections, this web of love and support that would continue long after he was gone. That evening, after everyone had retired to their various sleeping quarters, Xavier and Lydia sat alone on their porch. The night was clear and warm, the stars brilliant overhead. 30 years, Lydia said softly. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like yesterday. Best 30 years of my life, Xavier said, and I am looking forward to however many more we get. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together, the same gesture they had shared countless times over the decades. Xavier, do you remember what I said to you that first day? When you found me in the barn, I can work for my keep, he quoted. How could I forget? Those words changed my life. I was so scared, she admitted. I tried to sound confident, but inside I was terrified you would send me away. I had nowhere to go, no prospects, no hope. And then you said yes. It was the easiest decision I ever made, even if I did not realize it at the time. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. You have more than worked for your keep, my love. You built a home, raised a family, created a legacy. Everything good in my life traces back to you. And everything good in mine traces back to you, she replied. The man who could have sent away a desperate stranger but chose compassion instead. The man who saw me as an equal partner when the world saw me as nothing. The man who loved me when I had nothing to offer but myself. You had everything to offer, Xavier corrected gently. You just did not realize it yet. They sat in comfortable silence. 2 people who had walked through life together for 3 decades, who had built something lasting and true from the foundation of a chance encounter and mutual need. The years that followed brought the inevitable changes of aging. Xavier's hair went fully white, and his steps grew slower. Lydia's arthritis worsened, making some days difficult, but she faced it with the same determination she had brought to every challenge in her life. They supported each other through it all, weathering the difficulties of aging as they had weathered everything else together. Their children and grandchildren visited often, keeping them connected and involved. James took the ranch to new heights, implementing modern techniques while maintaining the quality breeding program his mother had established. Daniel expanded the business side, creating a successful enterprise that shipped horses across the country. Emma's children showed interest in the family business, ensuring the legacy would continue into the next generation. On quiet days, Xavier and Lydia would walk slowly around the ranch, visiting their favorite spots, reminiscing about the years they had shared. The barn where they first met still stood, though it had been expanded and improved. The house where they had first kissed still existed as part of the larger structure Daniel's family now occupied. Everywhere they looked held memories, layers of history built year by year. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had sent you away?" Xavier asked one afternoon as they rested on a bench under a cottonwood tree they had planted together 40 years earlier. "I try not to," Lydia admitted. "It frightens me to think about. Where would I have gone? What would have become of me? More than that, what would have become of you? Would you still be alone managing the ranch by yourself, never knowing what you were missing?" "I would have survived," Xavier said. "But I would not have lived. There is a difference. You taught me that." She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her, marveling that even now, after so many years, her presence brought him comfort and joy. They had been through so much together. Hard times and good times, struggles and triumphs, the everyday challenges of building a life and the extraordinary moments that defined their love. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, Xavier looked down at the woman in his arms and felt overwhelming gratitude. For the chance encounter that had brought them together, for her courage in asking to stay, for his wisdom in saying yes, for every day and night they had shared since. "I love you," he said, the words as fresh and meaningful as the first time he had spoken them. "I love you too," Lydia replied, her voice soft but certain. "Always and forever." They sat together as darkness fell. Two people who had found each other when both were lost, who had built a life and a love that would endure long after they were gone, whose story would be told and retold by their descendants as an example of what true partnership could create. The ranch thrived around them, a testament to their vision and hard work. The family they had created spread across the territory and beyond, carrying their values and their love into the future. And in the quiet moments between the bustle of daily life, Xavier and Lydia found peace and satisfaction in knowing they had lived well, loved deeply, and left the world better than they found it. As they finally rose to return to their house, moving slowly but steadily, Xavier took Lydia's hand one more time. She smiled up at him, and in her eyes he saw the same spark that had captivated him that first day in the barn, undimmed by time or hardship. "Come on," she said gently. "Let us go home." "We are already home," Xavier replied, squeezing her hand. "Anywhere you are is home to me." They walked together through the gathering darkness. Their steps matched after decades of walking side by side, heading toward the warm glow of the house that had sheltered their love through all the years. Behind them, the ranch settled into evening quiet, the horses content in their stalls, the cattle grazing peacefully in distant pastures, everything in its place under the vast New Mexico sky. And in that moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had chosen love over convenience, partnership over loneliness, and had built something that would last for generations. Their story, like the land they loved, would endure, a testament to the power of compassion, the strength of love, and the extraordinary things that could grow from the simple words, "I can work for my keep." The final years of their lives passed peacefully. Xavier and Lydia remained in their small house, supported by their family but still independent, still devoted to each other. They celebrated their 50th anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, an occasion marked by joy and gratitude. When Xavier passed away at the age of 78, Lydia was holding his hand, the same hand she had held through 50 years of marriage. His last words were, "I love you," and hers to him were the same. The family grieved, but they also celebrated a life well lived and a love that had been true from beginning to end. Lydia followed him 2 years later, her health declining without her partner by her side. On her last day, surrounded by her children, she smiled and spoke of seeing Xavier again, of being reunited with the man who had been her whole heart for more than half a century. They were buried side by side on the ranch they had built together, under the cottonwood tree where they had spent so many quiet afternoons. Their graves looked out over the land they had loved, the mountains they had watched together through countless sunsets, the home they had created from nothing but hard work and devotion. The ranch continued to thrive under the management of their descendants, who honored their memory by maintaining the values Xavier and Lydia had instilled: hard work, honesty, compassion, and love. The story of how they met became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as an example of how the smallest acts of kindness could change the course of lives. Years later, one of their great-granddaughters, researching family history, found an old journal Lydia had kept. In it, she discovered an entry from that first day when a desperate woman had walked onto a stranger's property and asked to work for her keep. "I met a man today who changed my life. He did not know it, and neither did I at the time, but his kindness saved me. More than that, it gave me hope. Hope that there are still good people in the world. Hope that I might find a place to belong. Hope that my story is not over but just beginning. His name is Xavier Randolph, and I think, perhaps, he might be my future." Below that entry, written in different ink, clearly added years later, were 2 more lines. "I was right. He was my future and I was his, and what a beautiful future we built together." Those words captured the essence of their story, a story that had begun with a chance meeting and grown into a love that lasted a lifetime. It was a story of 2 people who found each other when both were lost, who built a life together from nothing, who faced every challenge as partners, and who loved each other more with each passing day. Their descendants carried on, generation after generation, building on the foundation Xavier and Lydia had established. The ranch remained in the family, growing and adapting with the times, but always maintaining the core values its founders had established. And every year, on the anniversary of their wedding, the family gathered at their graves to tell their story again, to remember and honor the love that had started it all, because that is what true love does. It endures beyond death, beyond time, beyond memory. It becomes part of the fabric of those who come after, shaping their understanding of what is possible when 2 people choose each other, support each other, and build a life together based on mutual respect and unwavering devotion. Xavier and Lydia's story was not unique in its elements. Countless people have met by chance, fallen in love, built lives together. But their story was unique to them, to the specific choices they made, the specific challenges they faced, the specific joy they found in each other. And in being true to themselves and each other, they created something timeless. The barn where they first met still stands, preserved by the family as a monument to their beginning. Visitors to the ranch, descendants and friends alike, often stop there, standing in the spot where a desperate woman once groomed a stranger's horses and spoke the words that would change 2 lives forever: "I can work for my keep." Those words, simple and practical, had been a doorway to everything that followed. They had been Lydia's bid for survival and Xavier's opportunity for connection. They had been the beginning of a partnership that would grow into love, a love that would create a family that would build a legacy. And so their story lives on, not as history or legend, but as a living example of what is possible when people choose compassion over convenience, when they see potential instead of problems, when they open their hearts to possibility. Xavier and Lydia Randolph had built more than a ranch. They had built a testament to love, and that testament would endure as long as their descendants walked the land they had loved, as long as anyone remembered the cowboy who found a woman tending his horses, and the woman who said she could work for her keep. In the end, that is all any of us can hope for. To love well, to be loved in return, to build something that outlasts us, and to leave the world a little better than we found it. Xavier and Lydia had done all of that and more. Their story was complete, their love fulfilled, their legacy secure. And in the quiet moments on the ranch, when the wind whispered through the cottonwood trees and the sun set over the mountains, their presence could still be felt. Two souls who had found each other and never let go, whose love had been the foundation for everything that came after.